Hello, my name is Matt Shar, and today I'm going to explain how to resolve a very common objection that is used by atheists, known as the flying spaghetti monster argument. This argument is generally used by atheists who are mistakenly under the impression that theists only believe God exists based upon blind faith, and that any arbitrarily conceived concept of God is just as likely to be true as any other. The flying spaghetti monster argument is stated in the following way.
Why do you believe God created the universe, when it is equally probable that it was created by the flying spaghetti monster?
In order to resolve this objection, we only need to point out the attributes of God that can be discerned using the arguments from natural theology, and show how they are inconsistent with anything that could reasonably be identified as a flying spaghetti monster. Then listen to how the skeptic responds. For example, please consider the following arguments from natural theology and consider the attributes of God we can discern from them.
The first cause argument shows that the Creator is uncaused. The cosmological argument shows that the Creator is eternal, non-spatial, non-material, personal, and incredibly powerful. The fine-tuning and design arguments show that the Creator is extremely intelligent. The moral argument shows that the Creator is morally perfect and exists as the foundation of objective moral values and duties. The arguments from free will and consciousness show that the Creator is responsible for creating us with free will.
After explaining that God must possess these attributes, the theist will point out that spaghetti began to exist within time and space, is made of matter, and has no intelligence, morality, or power. The skeptic will respond by arguing that the spaghetti they are referring to is uncaused, eternal, non-spatial, non-material, personal, incredibly powerful, extremely intelligent, morally perfect, and is responsible for creating us with free will. In using this argument, the skeptic has evacuated all of the attributes of spaghetti that make it spaghetti, and replaced them with all of the attributes of God that are unique to God. They are describing God, but giving him the name Flying Spaghetti Monster. Applying the skeptic's reasoning in any other aspect of our lives would make our use of language to define the things in our world around us totally meaningless. Their reasoning would be equivalent to a person saying that they drive a banana to work, except this banana is not a fruit, but instead is made of metal. Also, this banana has 4 tires, an engine, windows, and a steering wheel. Everyone would recognize that the person is describing a car, not a banana. For the same exact reason, everyone should recognize that the skeptic is describing God, not anything that can reasonably be identified as a spaghetti monster.
The same line of reasoning that brought out the error in the flying spaghetti monster argument will work if the skeptic substitutes the flying spaghetti monster with any other thing that lacks the attributes of God.
Once we have explained the error in the skeptic's reasoning, they will generally realize that the flying spaghetti monster argument actually concedes the truth of theism, but assigns a ridiculous and misleading name to God. Then they will typically drop the argument and ask the following question.
What makes you think that the Christian God exists, as opposed to Zeus, Thor, or any of the other gods worshipped throughout history?
While it is true that we cannot discern the existence of the Christian God specifically by using the arguments from natural theology, this does not actually leave the possibilities open to all of the various gods worshipped throughout human history. Each religious system has their own set of beliefs and makes their own set of historical claims. Each one has to be tested using the canons of philosophical and historical inquiry and be allowed to stand or fall on its own merit. For example, the pantheons of gods worshipped by the Greeks, Romans, and Mayans are physical beings who began to exist and live within time and space. This includes Zeus, Thor, Zamaxis, Quetzalcoatl, and all the other so-called gods worshipped in that time. Any religious movement whose god is a physical being who began to exist and lives within time and space will not be consistent with the God revealed by the arguments from natural theology. The various pantheistic religions teach that the universe itself is God, so they would also be ruled out, because the universe began to exist and cannot be cited as the explanation for its own coming into being. Only something outside of the universe could have caused it to come into existence, and the universe is also not conscious, so it cannot issue moral commands or possess intrinsic intelligence. Therefore, no version of pantheism would be consistent with the arguments from natural theology. Other religious systems, like Buddhism or Taoism, are agnostic with respect to the existence of God, so they would not be viable options for identifying the true God either. The only religious movements that would be consistent with the arguments from natural theology are those who worship a God that is consistent with general theism. The only religious movements that have a God who is consistent with general theism are Bhakti Hinduism and the three monotheistic Abrahamic religions, namely Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. The major difference between these four religious movements is their opinion regarding the historical facts about Jesus.
Hinduism teaches that Jesus traveled to India during his teenage years, during which time he taught polytheistic worship and multiple earthly reincarnations, followed by the loss of one's body and personal identity in their version of heaven. In reality, Jesus, as a devout Jewish man, taught exclusive monotheism and one chance at earthly life, followed by a bodily resurrection, judgment, and retention of personal identity in either heaven or hell. If Jesus was executed by crucifixion, then Islam cannot be true, because his crucifixion and death are explicitly denied in the Quran in Surah 4, Ayat 157. Dr. Bart Ehrman, an atheist New Testament scholar, states the following in his book, Did Jesus Exist? Despite the enormous range of opinion, there are several points on which virtually all scholars of antiquity agree. Jesus was a Jewish man, known to be a preacher and teacher, who was crucified. If Jesus did not rise from the dead after his execution, then he was shown to be a blasphemer, and Judaism awaits its Messiah. If Jesus rose from the dead after his crucifixion, then Christianity is true. Dr. Gerd Ludemann, a New Testament scholar and historian who is also an atheist, makes the following statement in his book, What Really Happened to Jesus? A Historical Approach to the Resurrection. It may be taken as historically certain that Peter and the disciples had experiences after Jesus' death in which Jesus appeared to them as the risen Christ.
All of that being said, when atheists use the following argument, all they prove is that they have not bothered to familiarize themselves with the evidence and arguments used in support of the various religious movements that have existed throughout history.
You do not believe in the millions of other gods that have been worshipped throughout history? I just go one God further. If you were to apply the reasons you do not believe in all of those other gods to your God, then you would not believe in your God either.
The skeptic who makes this claim mistakenly believes that all religious beliefs are held without evidence or argument, and can therefore be dismissed without evidence or argument.
We should make it clear to the skeptic that there are a variety of arguments in support of general theism, and that it is a historical fact that many people who knew Jesus personally believe they witnessed him perform numerous miracles and rise from the dead.
If we observe the reality we find ourselves in, then make some simple philosophical inferences to the kind of God who could have been the cause of reality being this way, we will find that nearly every religious movement throughout history will be ruled out. In every religious movement, other than those who have a God that is consistent with general theism, there will be facts of reality that are either left unexplained or that are inconsistent with the God of that religion being the true God. However, the God of general theism completely and perfectly explains the reality we observe around us. Also, Christianity is the only world religion which can account for all of the historical facts surrounding Jesus' life, ministry, death, and numerous witnesses testifying to his resurrection. In summary, we learned that the flying spaghetti monster argument actually affirms the truth of theism, but assigns a misleading name to God. Then we learned that the vast majority of religious movements throughout history will be ruled out by the fact that they cannot explain the reality we observe around us. Only those religions which have a concept of God that is consistent with general theism will be consistent with natural theology. Then we learned that Bhakti Hinduism and the three Abrahamic religions are the only ones that worship a God who is consistent with the arguments from natural theology, and that discerning which of these is true depends on the historical facts about Jesus with respect to his life, ministry, death, and resurrection. In closing, the flying spaghetti monster argument is the result of a failure on the part of the skeptic to take the time to seriously consider the evidences and arguments offered by the various religious movements throughout history. We should be prepared with a solid understanding of both natural theology to establish the existence of God, and the arguments in favor of the truth of the Christian faith. Then, we will be able to point the skeptic away from error and towards the way, the truth, and the life, Jesus Christ our Lord. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.